Episode number 2 of the Chase Down is coming up. A lot of NFL buzz to talk about with NFL free agency beginning tomorrow on Monday. So let's go. Let's run it up and let's talk some football. All right, welcome into the Chase Down. My name is Chase Sr., and coming up on episode number 2, could the Eagles really trade one of the top young defensive players in football in defensive tackle Jalen Carter? Tough decisions await for general manager Howie Roseman. And if the Eagles were to trade away Carter, what would a trade cost? This wide receiver market could really explode, and I want to pinpoint 2 players who could really get paid starting tomorrow. And is the running back position back? A couple of years ago, when we entered this new offensive era that became very pass happy, the running back position was devalued. We've seen that change over the last couple of years because running backs have gotten paid, but they've earned it because they've played really well. Before we get to all of that, I do want to say thank you so much for all of the support. I launched this channel late on Friday night, and in less than 48 hours, we're already over 1,000 subscribers. I've wanted to talk about football in the NFL. We'll talk some college football as well on a national scale ever since I was 5 years old. So to see the response and the support already to kick off this channel, I really appreciate it. I encourage you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. I can't wait to build this thing. And for those of you who are familiar with the work that I've done covering the Niners, 49ers Report, 192,000 subscribers equals now 145,000 subscribers. Nothing is changing there. I just want to talk some more football, which is what this platform is going to allow me to do. So subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Let's begin by talking about Jalen Carter here. So there was that Jeremy Fowler report today after what Pretty Ricky said on Friday that multiple teams have reached out to Philadelphia about a Jalen Carter trade. And I think one thing that has gotten this conversation started, that's gotten this thing in motion, is that on Saturday, the Eagles paid their other defensive tackle, Jordan Davis, and gave him a massive contract extension, more than $60 million in guaranteed money. And they gave Jordan Davis $26 million per year. I thought that Davis played at an all-pro level in 2025, but I thought his market was going to be between $15 and $20 million. Now, he played really well. He's good against the run. He has shown a lot of growth as a pass rusher. Philadelphia loves him as a pillar of their organization, especially after they've lost some marquee leaders like Jason Kelce, Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, who retired. Then he came back, obviously. Lane Johnson is going to retire at some point. And so Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman have always valued these cultural pieces. And Jordan Davis is becoming that. And he has earned this, right? To start his career, he wasn't a 3-down player. And that was my biggest concern with him coming out of Georgia because he was out of shape to begin his NFL career. 6'6", 340. And at the NFL Combine, he skyrocketed up draft boards because he ran a freaky sub-540 yard dash. But he just couldn't last throughout the course of a 60-minute game. But to his credit, he's worked on his body. He's gotten in shape. Fell in love with the Peloton, really honed in on his diet. And I thought the switch really flipped, about halfway through the 2024 season. Vic Fangio, obviously, in his ear as well. And from that halfway point of the 2024 campaign, he started to play high-level football. And then in the playoffs, he was stout and really good and dominant. And then in the Super Bowl, he was awesome. And he used that momentum to put together a really strong 2025 season. But again, I just didn't see his market being the highest paid nose tackle in the history of the NFL and the second highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL right now. Chris Jones and then Jordan Davis and former Eagle Milton Williams are tied at $26 million per season. So does the Jordan Davis extension mean that Jalen Carter at some point here soon, whether it be this offseason, next offseason, is going to be the odd man out? It is very rare to see NFL teams pay 2 defensive tackles combined nearly $60 million. I understand that the salary cap is going to continue to increase and rise because business is robust and booming in the NFL, and the NFL salary cap is north of $300 million, and there are no signs of that slowing down. But you also think about what's coming down the pipe for Philadelphia and Howie Roseman, which we'll get to here in just a moment. And a few more things here that kind of cross my mind, right? I think teams are calling the Eagles to see about the availability of Jalen Carter because Jordan Davis got paid. The Eagles could also be looking at paying Jordan Davis, but also Moro Ajomo as players who are both really good, as Ajomo in 2025 was great, but those players would be less combined compared to also paying a Jalen Carter $30+ million per year if the Eagles wanted to just move forward with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. So they could save some money, is what I'm meaning to say here, if they go with Jordan Davis and Moro Ajomo compared to Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. Because Jalen Carter, if he plays well in 2026, if he doesn't sign an extension this offseason, he's going to demand easily $30+ million per year. And if he's an all-pro in 2026 like he was in 2024, I think he resets the market. And I think he makes history as the highest paid interior defensive lineman in the history of football, because Chris Jones is that right now at 30.75. But the player wants to set a record. The agent, of course, is incentivized to set a record as well. And his agent is Drew Rosenhaus, who's one of the most notable, famous agents in the history of professional sports. From the Eagles' standpoint, there's also no rush to extend Jalen Carter. If they exercise his fifth-year option, which guarantees his salary for 2027, he's under contract for the next 2 years. Carter and Rosenhaus, for the reasons that I mentioned, could prefer to wait as well. What if the Eagles' number right now is $28 million? Not quite Chris Jones. It's higher than Jordan Davis. Carter and Rosenhaus could say, hey, let's go out there, figure out the bilateral shoulder issues that plagued Carter throughout the 2025 season. And if he cooks, he'll make history. He'll set a record and he'll get a crazy bag. So those are some thoughts there. Obviously, what naturally comes into play, considering what happened with Jalen Carter at Georgia, some of the character concerns when he was in college, because he's had a pretty clean slate as an NFL player, is that maybe there's something that we don't know. Maybe there is something that is concerning and fishy, and the Eagles think it's too risky to give Jalen Carter record-setting money when they can't fully trust him. But going back to what I alluded to just moments ago, tough decisions coming up for Howie Roseman, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And to give you a peek into how the Eagles have built this thing, last year and over the last couple of years, they've been a very expensive offense, right? And in 2025, they were the most expensive offense in the NFL in terms of cash spent. And that's why they moved swiftly to move off of Kevin Patullo, because that offensive performance in 2025 was unacceptable. They got to get the quarterback playing better, and they got to maximize some of these playmakers. Obviously, the offensive line being injured didn't help, but the point here being there's a lot of money invested on the offensive side of the ball. They can't be a mediocre to bad unit and then losing the wild card round to a Niners team playing a bunch of backups with 5th, 6th, 7th-string linebackers, including myself out there, right? And so Howie has invested a lot of money into the offensive side of the football, while they have drafted and developed on the defensive side of the football. That's now going to change, and Howie has talked about this. Now they're going to have to spend a lot of money on defense, and they're going to have to hit on some draft picks on offense and kind of reset financially there. And when you look ahead for the Eagles, any good business out there always has foresight. They're always planning ahead, especially financially, right? In a big business like the NFL. I don't know how it's possible, even with an increasing salary cap, for the Eagles to pay Jordan Davis $26 million per season, Jalen Carter $30+ million per season, Quinyon Mitchell $30+ million per season because he's extension eligible next offseason. So too is his running mate, drafted in the same draft class, Cooper DeJean. He's going to demand at least $25 million per year, and he doesn't have the luxury of that 5th-year option because he was a second-round pick. And then, oh yeah, A.J. Brown's making $32 million. Elsewhere on offense, Jalen Hurts is making coin. Landon Dickerson got a second contract. He's one of the highest paid guards. Cam Jurgens, one of the highest paid centers. Lane Johnson, one of the highest paid right tackles. Jordan Mailata, one of the highest paid left tackles in football. So somebody big, as far as marquee name value, I think is going to get traded by the Eagles at some point here soon. And oh yeah, the Eagles also really like Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith at the pass rusher spot. So I think here soon, whether it be this offseason, during the season, after the year, you're going to see at least one star player get traded. And then you could see some players get cut to free up some cash flow on the offensive side of the football. And this is why the draft is going to be so important for Philadelphia. And that's why at the end of April with the 2026 draft, I think the Eagles go offense heavy in the early rounds. I do think with this Jalen Carter situation, though, the Eagles and Howie have to tread lightly here because things could go sideways if the Eagles decide to keep a good player and a good guy in Jordan Davis over a great player who's a little bit edgy in Jalen Carter. Carter's a force, man. He's a difference maker. He's a needle mover. He is a game changer. And you can't let guys like that go. As far as what the price tag for Jalen Carter would be, I think it's 2 first-round picks. Here's why. All-Pro in 2024, still really good in 2025. If a 26-year-old Micah Parsons got 2 ones and a soon-to-be Max Crosby, who's going to be 29 soon, got 2 ones, I think Jalen Carter can get 2 ones as well. Now, edge rusher is valued more than interior defensive lineman, but Jalen Carter's a unique breed. Reported teams interested: Packers, Bears, Niners, Seahawks. What do you notice about those teams? Packers take defense and defensive line very seriously. The Bears desperately need a defensive tackle, and they passed on Jalen Carter. Took Darnell Wright, worked out well, but they passed on him in 2023. The Niners were dead last in the NFL in sacks last year. They have nobody from the interior who can rush the quarterback. They have good run stoppers in Alfred Collins and CJ West, but from a pass rushing component, they're a little bit weak there. And then the Seattle Seahawks. DeMarcus Lawrence, retirement rumors, some marquee defensive players for the Super Bowl champs on defense could decide to go elsewhere, get paid, and they've got top 5 cap space available. So the rich could get richer, but I would doubt that the Eagles would be willing to trade Jalen Carter away to an NFC team. And Carter in 2024, when he was an All-Pro, his pass rush grade 81.5, 7th in the NFL. He forced 2 fumbles, first among all defensive tackles, had 27 stops, that was 19th, 5 sacks, that was 23rd, 36 hurries, that was 9th, 12 quarterback hits, 8th among interior defensive linemen, 53 pressures, that ranked 9th, 6 batted passes. He's really good at that. That's instinctual. That's feel. That's reading the eyes of the quarterback. That ranks 2nd. And he played 830 snaps. So this guy is a disruptive force on defense, but he's also been extremely durable. And I think his best football is still to come if he can get in a little bit better shape and especially figure out some of those shoulder woes. But this is a building block and a foundational piece for your defense that you can build around. And what have you seen the last couple of years in this offensive era that I was alluding to a little bit earlier? A lot of teams have started to prioritize an interior pass rush. And sometimes elite interior pass rushers are harder to find than edge guys. So I think this is a fascinating situation for a multitude of reasons. Great player, a great organization that could deal him away. Eagles gave Jordan Davis a ton of money. And does that lead to an odd man out or odd men out who the Eagles can't afford to pay? So they decide to trade some of these players. All right, let's talk about the wide receiver market here for topic number 2. This wide receiver market could go crazy. And it could pop off with 2 players who I'm not sure are number 1 wide receivers in Alec Pierce and Romeo Doubs. And if you remember a couple of years ago, I remember being live doing our NFL free agency coverage here at Chat Sports. And we saw that Christian Kirk deal come through. And I think everybody's jaw dropped, right? Everybody had the same reaction of, holy shit, that's a lot of money for Christian Kirk. And when the Jags gave Christian Kirk that deal, there were a chain of events, and it was rapid fire after that of resetting the wide receiver market. And financially, that changed the wide receiver position forever. Because if Christian Kirk got that bag, there were other wide receivers that offseason and in the following off seasons who were much better players than Christian Kirk. But because he set the market for being a solid player, but not a great player, it led to all these wide receivers getting crazy money. And so this free agency class, there are potential non-number one wide receivers in Pierce and Doubs who could get wide receiver one money. And when you talk about both players, I really like Alec Pierce. He's fascinating because I like this game at Cincinnati. He's tall at 6'4", runs in the 4.4s. He can go up and get it. He can beat man. He can beat zone. He can beat press coverage. He can climb the ladder and out jump you for some 50-50 balls. But he's also low-key explosive. I don't think a lot of people are giving him enough credit for that, probably because he's a white guy. But the last 2 years, he's led the NFL in yards per catch at north of 20 yards. Him and Deshaun Jackson are the only players in NFL history to lead the NFL in yards per catch at 20 or more yards multiple times. And Deshaun Jackson is one of the most electrifying players in the history of football. But the thing with Alec Pierce is he a number one? Can he thrive as a number one when defenses start to defend him that way and in that manner? Because I love the skill set, but that's to be determined. Here's the other thing, though. Alec Pierce has had awful quarterback play. There hasn't been any consistency there, and he hasn't been with an elite quarterback. So if he goes to New England and he teams up with Drake May, I do think that he can put up really good numbers and really good production, and that contract could be worth it. But it is interesting because according to Jeremy Fowler, he appears poised to make at least $27 million per year on his new deal. And if there are multiple teams who are interested in Alec Pierce and there's a little bit of a bidding war, does that number go up to 30? Shoot, that's what Brandon Ayuk got. And Brandon Ayuk got that when he was catching 75 balls for the Niners. Among the teams interested, Patriots need a wideout. Commanders need a wideout alongside Terry McLaurin. Las Vegas Raiders need a number one for Fernando Mendoza. And then the Titans, I like Alec Ayumanner, but they need some weapons on offense. And I like what Robert Saleh has done with that coaching staff, but they need to get Cam Ward some guys. And then you think about Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs has played on a Packers team where a lot of different guys have had to eat. Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave, Josh Jacobs. Jordan Love has spread the ball out, and that's why those Packers offenses have been really aesthetically pleasing to watch because it's such a balanced approach, throwing it, running it, but so many great weapons. But Doubs is 6'2", 200 pounds. He runs on the high 4.4s. He's a good route runner. He's slippery in the open field. He can make plays downfield. I love the way that he can track it, make some really good plays along the sideline. And I think that his best football, like Alec Pierce, is ahead of him as well. And part of these contracts, part of these draft picks are teams banking on and projecting what these players can be. Now, for Christian Kirk, I didn't think there was like much of a projection, which is why that contract was always crazy. For Pierce, it's going to sound crazy if it gets 27 to 30, but I think there's a possibility that he can live up to that type of deal. But would you rather have Pierce at 27 to 30 or Romeo Doubs for like 20 to 25? I'd almost rather go Doubs at 20 to 25, especially if he goes to a team like the Niners, where I think Kyle Shanahan can really utilize him beautifully. But then with Doubs, he's got the concussion problems too that you have to factor in. And that's why he's been wearing the Guardian cap. And then you look elsewhere at the wide receiver spot, Mike Evans. Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer. Now he's on the other side of 30, but to start his career, 11 straight years of more than 1,000 yards. That's insane when you think about it. But he's dealt with some injuries the last 2 years, especially soft tissue stuff. So what is his market going to be? And will Pierce and Doubs increase the market for a guy like Mike Evans? Or will his track record and Hall of Fame type of resume speak for itself? These are the types of nitty-gritty things that I can't wait to see play out in free agency. Lastly, is the running back position back? Kenneth Walker of the Seahawks, Travis Etienne of the Jags could also get massive deals. And you think about the running back value of late. A couple of years ago, I thought I was onto something, and I think I was, because what NFL teams did with their decisions spoke volumes, right? But you think about the running back market a few years ago. It became a position where a lot of teams did not want to invest in players. They did not want to give them big contracts, and they looked at the position as expendable because you could get cheaper backs in free agency who could end up being productive, and you could draft guys in the early, mid, and later rounds who ended up being fantastic players, and your offense wouldn't really miss a beat. And a few years ago, you saw all these teams, given what Kansas City was able to do, become so pass happy and pass heavy that the running back position kind of tanked as far as the value, how those players were looked at, but the contracts that they got. And this wasn't that long ago. I mean, the New York Giants let Saquon Barkley go to a division rival in the Philadelphia Eagles, right? You think back to how the Niners kind of fleeced the Carolina Panthers in that trade for Christian McCaffrey. But the running back position has increased in value and importance of late because as defenses have started to adjust to passing attacks by playing a lot more too high, and they've countered offenses spreading it out with defenses getting smaller, slimmer, faster, getting more sideline to sideline guys, what have teams done to counter the counter? They've started to play more bully ball, and they've started to run it a lot more. Look at what the Eagles did in 2024 with Saquon Barkley. He had the most rushing yards in the history of the NFL, regular season and postseason combined, and I think that he would have taken down Eric Dickerson's record for most rushing yards in a regular season if the Eagles had let him play in Week 18. They sat him, wanted to get him ready and rested up for a Super Bowl run. It ended up working out because against Green Bay, against the Rams, against Washington, he was incredible in that playoff run, put up crazy numbers and had multiple long touchdown runs. And then in the Super Bowl, the Eagles offense and Jalen Hurts had success throwing it because the Chiefs sold out against the run. They loaded up the box and they forced Jalen Hurts to beat him, and he did. And he won Super Bowl MVP. But Saquon did that in 2024. The importance of Kenneth Walker in 2025 for Seattle was paramount. You think about what Christian McCaffrey's been able to do with the Niners, right? Won Offensive Player of the Year in 2023. I think he should have won MVP that year, frankly. In 2024, doesn't play, played 4 games, bilateral Achilles tendonitis, had the knee injury. Niners offense wasn't good. He comes back in 2025 and he has more than 2,000 all-purpose yards. He's catching it like crazy, has more than 400 touches, and had his impact be felt in the run game too. Christian McCaffrey has been just an incredible player in acquisition for the 49ers. Saquon Barkley got paid, and then the Eagles gave him a new contract after 2024. Christian McCaffrey got traded for, and then the Niners gave him at the time a record-setting deal at the running back spot. Kenneth Walker for Seattle this year was so good, especially down the stretch. The contact balance, the speed to get to the perimeter, the physicality, the eye for the end zone. And now you see Kenneth Walker hitting free agency. You see a couple of these teams that are in need of a running back. And I think Walker potentially could get paid because of a bidding war. And then how about Travis Etienne? You know, the last few years, he's turned into the player who a lot of people thought he was going to be coming out of Clemson. Had some injuries here and there, but he has been a phenomenal back of late. So this running back market right now, as far as average annual value, you have Saquon Barkley at 20.6, Christian McCaffrey at 19, Derrick Henry at $15 million per year. Pretty good deal for Baltimore. Breece Hall at 14.2. I think that's after the franchise tag. Jonathan Taylor at 14. Alvin Kamara at 12.25. Josh Jacobs at 12. James Cook at 11.5. Kyron Williams is at 11. Aaron Jones at 10. James Conner at 9.5. David Montgomery, 9.1. Ramondre Stevenson at 9. And then Ashton Genty, a rookie on a rookie deal, is making $8.9 million in average annual value. There is a huge gap between Saquon, McCaffrey, and then Derrick Henry. $4 million in difference between Henry and McCaffrey. So where do Etienne and Walker fall there? And in what range will they be? Running backs are important once again, and the running back market has changed because these players have gotten paid. Fowler on Walker seems to be the market setter as it stands, but Travis Etienne will be right there in the mix. Some teams that Fowler has talked to are setting the market ceiling at around $12 million. That could go up, though, if enough teams get involved. Fowler, hearing that Walker will consider the Giants and Commanders among his options, with the Titans as a possibility as well. Etienne has AFC West love via Denver and Kansas City. Both those teams could check on Walker and others too, depending on price ranges. So you could see a couple of teams vying for the services of Walker and Etienne. That could drive the price tag up. And if a team is like, we need Walker, we need Etienne, do they overpay for a running back? And also, I just think that the teams listed there are very intriguing and notable, right? Kenneth Walker to the Giants with Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, Malik Neighbors, John Harbaugh. I like it. To Washington with Jaden Daniels. I see that fit. The Titans, again, Cam Ward could use a back. Tony Pollard's been good, but Walker and Etienne, much better players. And then the two AFC West teams. Are we going to see Denver and Kansas City jockeying for a Walker or an Etienne? Because you think about those players going to those teams and how much better they can make their respective offenses. And both are different players with different flavors. So I'm glad that teams are valuing the running back position once again, because we have seen those running backs have profound impacts on these teams. All right. Episode number 2 of the Chase Down. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you made it until the end of the video, type real one down in the comment section. Something that I do on the Eagles show and the Niners show, because if you made it this long, 27 minutes, that's awesome stuff. I will be back all throughout the week during free agency with a lot of instant reactions. Be on the lookout for that. And of course, draft content to come as well, because we're always talking football right here on the Chase Down.